Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to Gnan Cloud Garage. In this session, I'm going to talk about VMware interview preparation, session 4, and I'm going to talk about day 2 operations. And one of the key topic is best practices. Here is the agenda. And let's quickly recap our day 2 operations overview first. And in our previous session in the interview preparation, I talk about Day 0 design, Day 1 deploy, and Day 2 operations, and Day N is the lifecycle management. So today I'm going to focus on Day 2 operations. And as part of Day 2 operations, one of the key step in the operations is best practices. So I will give you the quick overview of VMware vSphere best practices and ESXi best practices. And within the vSphere, I'm going to cover the mainly 10 topics, all the best practices. The key topics I'm going to cover now, and which is ESXi, virtual machine, vCenter, vMotion, storage vMotion, high availability, FT, DRS. These are all the vCenter key features. FT, DRS, distribute resource scheduler best practices, and also the vSphere storage best practices. And finally, we'll close the session with vSphere networking best practices. Okay, now let's quickly recap our day 2 operations. So before recap the day 2, and I'm just giving you a quick overview of what are the Day 0 design and Day 1 deploy task. This Day 0 design and deploy task I covered specifically for the vSphere in our previous sessions. If you log into my Gnan Cloud Garage channel and go to the playlist tab, you can see the specific VMware vSphere and vSphere Plus playlist. It have the 43, it has 43 videos, and also that there is some home lab quick bytes. Here also we have 7, and almost 50 videos are already covered with the individual concepts of complete vSphere, all the concepts, architectural design, and also the deployment task, and including the home labs. So if you are not if you are watching this video first time, I would recommend to go through this set of all the design and deployment task first, then it's easy to understand the Day 2 best practices. Okay, and let's start with the, before going to the Day 2 operations, let me give you a quick overview of VMware vSphere architectural concept. So high level VMware vSphere architectural overview. This is a complete architecture diagram. If you let's start explaining from bottom to top. Suppose in the bottom I highlighted that physical resources in our even though if we are using a vSphere is mainly for a server virtualization software. Even though if we are talking about server virtualization, still we require a physical resources, that means physical servers. In this architectural diagram we have 3 ESX boxes, and we have few data stores. This is icon for the data store, and we have few network devices. Network device means switch, router, firewall, load balancer devices. So these are all the physical resources. On top of the physical physical servers, we are installing the ESXi operating system, and ESXi is a virtualization hypervisor operating system. Using this ESXi hypervisor, it allows you to create a multiple virtual machines, and in our real-time scenarios, when we have more than 2 ESXi hosts, in order to manage the ESXi hosts, we require a management tool. That management tool is called VMware vCenter Server. Using vCenter Server, we can manage all our virtual machines, ESXi hosts, and we can also configure the vCenter level features. So one of the key feature is configuring the vCenter clusters. When we enable your vCenter cluster features, it will provide you some additional features like HA, DRS, fault tolerance, and so on. Even in the right side, I'm trying to explain some of the infrastructure services. Those are specifically to network. Within a network concept, I talk about earlier standard switch, distributed switch, VMware NSX, and VMware vSphere network IO control. Even NSX, if you want to interested to learn, even there is a separate playlist for NSXT. Okay, and I covered the Tanju portfolio and modern data production solutions, and also we realize automation solutions. And we are now today's session is focusing on the interview preparation concepts. Okay, so And within the storage, I covered all these concepts earlier for the specifically for design and deploy. And today I will explain you the best practices and VMware vSphere, VMFS, Virtual Machine File System, and VMware Virtual Volumes, VMware vSAN, Virtual SAN, and thin provisioning, vSphere Storage IO Control. These all comes under the infrastructure services. And even within the vCenter application services includes scalability and availability. When we're talking about availability, the main features are vSphere vMotion, storage vMotion, high availability, fault tolerance, and data recovery. And under the scalability, the main application services are DRS, distributed resource scheduler, distributed power management, haunted feature, and also overcommitment and content library. These all topics, if you're interested to learn one by one, you can just go through the from the playlist. You can choose vSphere and go through all the videos. Okay, and if you're already familiar, and this is right for you to understand all the best practices. Okay, now it's the time to talk about what are the day 2 operations. And before going deep dive into the day 2, let me explain in the previous session quick recap. And there are 5 key topics that we look at when we consider day 2 operations. So the process to streamline operations, generally streamline means make more efficient operations. So the first key step for the day 2 operations is best practices. Before we are getting the handover from our day 1 team to day 2, or even the day 1 team also recommend to follow some best practices in our existing infrastructure. That is not only a vSphere, any of the IT, virtual infrastructure or physical infrastructure or cloud infrastructure. We should follow some best practices. Best practices mainly for prevention. Okay, and second thing is baselining. Baselining is nothing but we are following some standard benchmarks. So understand the norm and accepted standard means it's kind of benchmarks. We should follow some benchmarks when we start deploying in our customer IT organization environments. Okay, and recovery also one of the key operation role, that is mainly specifically for with the least effort how soon we can recover the data. And another key concept is monitoring, and monitoring main purpose of monitoring is problem detection. Okay, and finally the main topic is troubleshooting. So troubleshooting is for problem solving, but if you want to do a problem solving before troubleshooting, we should have a monitoring. Okay, so in this session I'm focusing on the best practices, and baselining concepts also are covered in the our previous videos. And recovery also, I explained few recovery solutions also in the previous sessions. And monitoring, I covered the vCenter alarms. And if you are interested for any third party tools, I will cover separately in the later sessions. But in the if we complete the best practices today, in our next session I will focus on the troubleshooting. Okay, and baselining standard benchmarks, I during the previous VMware vSphere videos I covered the standard benchmarks for each topic. And recovery also I covered specifically for the modern data protection solutions, and even the cluster level how we can recover. These and all I covered. Even if you watch the previous video also, I have the some topics I covered specifically to recovery. And monitoring perspective, we have a covered for vCenter alarms, and in the later sessions I will focus on the VMware vRelease operations. That is also one of the best tool from VMware monitoring purpose. It will help you to detect the problems, and not only problem detection, it will also help us to do the capacity planning, reporting, and providing a advanced dashboards and all. So that topic I will cover separately, but on our next session I will focus on the troubleshooting. Okay, so let's try to focus on best practices today. And VMware vSphere best practices. So for in-depth ESXi, vCenter server, and other virtual components best practices, read the performance best practices guide that is available in VMware website. This is the website link, or else in the Google you can just type VMware vSphere best practices. You will find within the first link you will find this guide, and this guide is close to 100 pages guide. But I'm not going to explain all the 100 pages information, but whatever the key items for each virtual component, those key best practice items I will cover today. And if you are interested to learn more, you can just go through this PDF when you have a spare time. Okay, and why we are learning best practices today as part of interview preparation is, normally whatever the problem is occurring in the organizations, most of the problem, if we miss to configure any of the best practices, it may causes for our infrastructure incidents. So that is the reason best practices also plays a key role when we are working in a IT organization. So it's a very important topic we have to understand. And even in the interview perspective, interviewer may ask any of the scenario, but while they're explaining the scenario, every organization have their different experiences while they're doing the troubleshooting. But in the interview perspective, they will give you based on their experience, they can explain some scenario. But when whatever scenario interviewer given to us, but understand the logic what they are missing in that scenario, that missing point may be relevant to the best practice. If they didn't follow the best practice, definitely they may end up with a problems in the virtual infrastructure. So that is the reason I'm explaining the best practice, but I am not giving you a direct questions in the interview perspective. But if you have knowledge on best practices, whatever the scenario interviewer given to us, once we understand that scenario, we can provide the relevant answer. Okay, and in simple terms, I just written here, in general, a variety of vSphere problems are caused by misconfigurations. So misconfiguration means if you didn't follow the best practices, it will become a misconfiguration. And system failures, and system failures is like it's expected. It's a kind of hardware related issues or operating system issue, related issue. These are all unpredictable, but misconfiguration still within our control. If you plan to do a best practices, with best practices, if you do a infrastructure implementation, definitely the IT infrastructure, the specific virtual infrastructure, or whatever the other network and storage infrastructures will be stable always. Okay, and there is a one famous proverb, prevention is better than cure. So best practice is mainly for prevention. Okay, now let's start with the one by one best practices. Let me start with ESXi best practices first. So ESXi, Elastic SkyX, it's a type 1 hypervisor operating system. And let's try to understand the best practices before we are implementing in our organization. Normally ESXi we are installing on a hardware. So we should verify that whether this ESXi host, ESXi operating system is compatible with our hardware. Our hardware model must have a compatibility. We have to verify HCL, VMware HCL, hardware compatibility list. We need to validate that our hardware model is compatible with our ESXi or not. Suppose if your hardware is not compatible with your ESX latest version 7.0 update 3, if you install the ESX, it may install, but later you may find some unexpected compatible related issues. So that's the reason we need to validate the hardware compatibility list first. And once we install ESX, it will allow you to create a multiple virtual machine. As an example, I'm showing you here in this diagram is two VMs, not only two, you can configure n number of virtual machines on ESXi host. Apart from this, installing ESX and configuring the virtual machine, still we need to validate some key items. Those key items are always set up VMware syslog collector. So syslog collector you can configure in a Windows operating system, or VMware also have a VMware syslog service appliance that is called vRealize login site. vRealize login site, the name itself says log insight. This VRLI product also VMware is providing, that it will also help for to collect our centralized logs. So depends on our customers choice. Some customers they may go with a Windows related tools like SolarWinds Kiwi syslog server. That name itself Kiwi syslog server. It will also help us to collect the centralized log servers from our compute device, server ESXi host device, and also network storage, all the infrastructure devices. It will collect the logs and keep it, because organization as per their company security regulations, they have to maintain the archival syslogs. In case of any unexpected incident happen, we need to verify our old logs. there is a some security reasons we have to maintain a syslog. Even in the real world, for if you are any IT infrastructure, if you are maintaining the ESXi host, it's recommended to configure syslog, because the default VMware ESXi syslog server can available only for last 1 month data or until last 6 months data. If you want to maintain last 6 months or more than 1 year data, we require a syslog server. So that is a one best practices. Even if you are getting the knowledge transfer or handovering the project from your day 1 team, first as a day 2 operationals engineer, you have to validate whether syslog is configured or not. Okay, and the second point is always set up VMware ESXi dump collector. Not only a log collector, even ESXi dump collector also we have to configure. It will help us whenever ESXi host is unexpectedly down or ESXi affected with a purple screen of death. Even interviewer may ask, when ESXi host is affected with a purple screen of death, how you can validate the ESXi logs? That ESXi VM kernel failure or the purple screen of death log, PSOD logs, we can validate through the ESXi dump collector logs. Okay, and that is the second point. And third point is ensure that only the firewall ports required by running services are enabled in a security profile. So by default, we have so many security ports, firewall ports in our ESXi. Whenever you require any specific firewall ports, those ports only you can enable, like SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol, that is mainly used for a monitoring purpose. If you want to monitor ESXi host, you can enable that monitoring protocol. And same way, if you want to enable a time protocol, network time protocol, NTP, you can enable the NTP protocol on ESXi host using the configuration tab, security profile tab. Okay, and let's come to the fourth point. Ensure the management network and ESXi host management network. That means VM kernel port group. That VM kernel port group is isolated from the general network VLAN to decreases the attack surface of host. This is just for security reasons. Always your production network, and production network means virtual machine port group, whether it is a vSwitch port group or DV-switch port group. But VMware recommendation is don't mix with your production port group and ESXi host management port group. Both should be in a different VLAN. But in our home lab, you can configure within a same network, no issues. But in the real world scenario, management network in one IP series and virtual machine network will be in a different IP series. Different IP series means it have a different virtual LAN. Like management network have a VLAN 10 and vMotion network will be VLAN 11 and virtual machine network will be VLAN 12 and so on. Okay, and fifth point, ensure the management network has redundancy through NIC teaming. So it's also recommended best practices. But in our home lab, even one ESX running with one NIC or two NIC, it's okay. But in the production environment, for management network, we should reserve two physical NICs. And similarly, for virtual machine traffic, we should reserve two NICs, because minimally two, and you can assign more than two also. Why we are assigning two NICs means in order to configure NIC teaming, it requires minimally two NICs. If you have it, if you plan to configure a NIC teaming, that means teaming of multiple NICs, it will help us in case of one network is down and the ESXi host start connecting to the another network. Okay, and ensure that ESXi shell or SSH secure shell connectivity are not permanently enabled. As per VMware best practices, it's not recommended to keep SSH enable every time. You can just enable whenever if you want to do a ESX level access, command line access, or ESXi host troubleshooting purpose only. You can enable the ESXi shell and SSH ports. Okay, or else you can keep it as a disabled state just for a security concern. And these 6 points, suppose in the interviewer, if the interviewer, we may expect some questions they may ask, like, let's say I have set up a new ESXi host and you are getting the handover from the day 1 team, and as a day 2 operation engineer, what is your key options to validate before while handovering the ESXi host? That time you can explain these points. Not only these 6, you can also highlight the ESXi host configuration details, IP address and all. Along with those IP information, you can highlight these points like syslog collector, dump collector, firewall ports, management network is in a different VLAN or not, and NIC teamings are configured on ESXi host. And not only one ESX, suppose you are getting the multiple ESXi host, As a day 2 operations engineer, our responsibility to validate all ESXi host network information and also the SSH and cell connectivity status as well. This is about the ESXi best practices. And now let's talk about virtual machine best practices. After installing the ESX, we are creating a virtual machine. Virtual machine means it is a software generated machine and looks like a physical machine. So let's talk about virtual machine best practices. So within our virtual machine best practices, as we know, ESXi host, we can create a virtual machine. On top of the virtual machine, we have all the virtual devices. Why it is virtual devices means vCPU, memory, or we call it as RAM, virtual disk, virtual network cards, virtual keyboard, mouse, virtual SCSI controller, CD and DVD. Because ESXi is a hypervisor, it will allows you to transfer all your hardware components to virtual components, or in other words, virtualization is nothing but it is a technology. It allows you to transform hardware into software. Whatever we have in our hardware component, CPU, memory, disk and NIC, all hardware component become a virtual, okay, within our virtual machine. On top of your virtual hardware, we can install the operating system. We can install Windows, Linux, Solaris, any of the other operating systems. On top of the operating system, you can run the multiple applications. It is mostly in the real time. We can use a project related applications like a database application or any of the SAP related, all project related applications only we can install. This is the default virtual machine architecture. Now let's talk about the main key points for a best practices. So as a virtual machine best practices, the main purpose is virtual machine should always run VMware tools. VMware tools main purpose is it will provide all virtual machine device drivers. Without these device drivers, virtual machine may not function properly. Okay, and run VMware tools to ensure that the correct drivers are installed for virtual machine. Suppose interviewer may ask, my virtual machine performance is degraded and I am unable to access the network. So as a operations engineer, we should verify that whether this virtual machine running with VMware tools or not. If the VMware tools are not running, we need to install VMware tools. Let's say interviewer may say that another cross question is VMware tools are already installed, but our responsibility now is if the VMware tools are already installed, we need to validate that whether the VMware tools are running with up-to-date version or not. If it is running with a older version, there will be a performance degrade. Okay, so like that, when they ask for any counter question, we need to be ready with the immediate spontaneous answer. Okay, so that's how these best practices are helpful. And the second point, right size VMs to ensure that they use only required hardware. If VMs are provisioned with over allocation of resources that are not used, ESX performance and capacity are reduced. So normally this is also our operational engineer responsibility. We need to validate that whether we are assigning enough CPU, enough memory to the virtual machine. If any virtual machines are provisioned, over provisioned means that is not recommended. We should provision based on the customer requirement, and also as a technical consultant, we need to validate whether the customer requesting for a ideal resources or not. If they are asking for over resources, like actual requirement is 4 vCPU, if your customer requested for a 16 CPU, you can just immediately verify that application, what is the minimum software requirement and recommended software requirement. Always we should assign based on the recommended virtual software device requirements. Let's say recommended is 8 CPU, you can assign only 8 CPU. If the customer asks for 16 or more than that, better you can just initially you can explain to the customer based on your available if you have enough available resources you can assign, or else you can just explain to the customer. As a technical engineer, it's our responsibility to convince the customer with our proper justification. And third point, any devices not being used should be disconnected. Like if suppose the CD DVD you connected with ISO, it's not recommended to keep it connected every time. It's recommended to disconnect. Okay, I mentioned example CD, DVD, floppy, and so on. Even sometimes we can also connect USB drive to virtual machine. It's not recommended to keep virtual machine running with the USB. It's once your work is done, you can disconnect the USB device from the virtual machine. and VM should be stored on shared storage. That is also recommended best practice. And why we are storing in the shared storage is to allow for maximum vSphere vMotion compatibility, high availability configurations in a cluster. To configure HA and vMotion and all, the best recommendation is we should have a shared storage. And memory CPU reservation should not be used regularly because they reserve the resources can prevent the vSphere hypervisor, that means ESXi host, from being able to take advantage of overcommit technologies. So VMware recommending that don't reserve any CPU memory on virtual machine level. You can just assign based on the requirement. No need to set a reservation specific to the VM level. If you really want to reserve the virtual machine CPU and memory, better to go with a resource pool concept. You can create a resource pool for reservations, and it's not recommended to configure on a individual virtual machine level because it will we cannot utilize the overcommit advantage on the ESXi layer. And the sixth point, storage and network IO control. We have to recommend to enable storage IO control option can dramatically help VM performance in times of contention. If there is really contention, we will get a notification information. Contention is nothing but it's like a wait time. Suppose, for example, uh, normally in a restaurant, if you have a 10 seats dining table, if the couple is visited the hotel and they are using their dining table with the 10 seats dining table they are using. So already two people are sitting on that dining table. And suppose another family came with 10 members. So that 10 members, they want to utilize that same dining table. They have to wait until this first couple has to leave the table. So that means that 10 people family has to wait. That is nothing but a contention. So there is a contention. So even if your network IO control, if you are not enable the network IO control, it may virtual machine performance in times of contention. We are unable to analyze which VM or which specific application server is consuming a high IO, high input and output on a storage layer and network layer. Okay, now let's talk about a vCenter best practices. So vCenter also one of the management tool. It allows you to manage multiple ESXi host, virtual machine, and vCenter is the brain of the or vSphere concept, and it will provide all the n number of features. Like in our previous sessions, I covered close to 40 plus vCenter features. If you learn all the vCenter 40 plus features, you will become a VMware technical consultant. Now, let me explain the vCenter best practices. Verify that vCenter platform service controller and database have advocate CPU, memory, and disk resources available. Before configuring the vCenter server, we need to verify within our ESXi host have enough resources or not. Because in the vCenter, it's available like a t-shirt sizes, small, medium, large, and X large. So if your customer infrastructure size is large, we should also choose the vCenter with a large size. When we are selecting a large size, we must and should validate our ESXi host have enough CPU, memory, disk, and resources. That is the one key best practice item. And another item, verify that proper inventory size is configured during the installation. Inventory size means same like a virtual vCenter sizing. We have to, based on our ESXi host count, we need to choose the relevant vCenter sizing, small, medium, large, or X large. And even we have a tiny vCenter also. Normally tiny vCenter we can using for a testing purpose or home lab. But in the production environment, minimally it start from small, medium, large, X large. And minimize latency between components, vCenter and platform service controller, in short form PSC, by minimizing the network hops between the components. Okay, this is also recommended. And if you are using enhanced linked mode normally it will help us to communicate between two or more vCenter servers. Suppose in this diagram we have one vCenter, left side refers as one vCenter and right side refers as a one vCenter. Even vCenter also looks like a VM. It consists of vCenter server application and platform service controller application. When we connect the two vCenters, it's become as a enhanced linked mode. VMware recommends having a external platform service controllers. When we plan to configure enhanced linked mode, VMware recommendation is maintain a external PSC instead of embedded PSC. Okay, And another point, verify that DNS is configured and functional for all components. VMware recommend to maintain all your vCenter name must maintain a DNS record, and always add your vCenter server name to our Active Directory as well. We should assign a fully qualified domain name. And DNS means it's a name resolution purpose. It will resolve IP address to host name and host name to IP address. And verify that time is correct. Even if you want to enable the time is correct means we need to enable a NTP service, network time protocol service should be enabled, so that our vCenter time will automatically sync with our ESXi host time. Either you can sync with ESXi host time, or if you have any centralized NTP servers in your environment, you can enter your NTP server IP details in our vCenter level, so that it will sync your accurate time based on your network time protocol servers, NTP servers. And all other components in the environment also maintain a same time. This is also recommended. Sometime if you are not maintaining this time sync, definitely there will be some time sync level issues. Suppose your application team schedule some job to run on early morning 5 o'clock. But if your vCenter is running with a inaccurate time, time is not accurately. A time is running with a not appropriate time. It's running with a different time. So if the morning, if the application user come on site, if they verify the application, if the scheduled job is still not a running state, instead of completing, it's still running state. Definitely he will raise a one incident ticket. So the reason is our vCenter level time sync having issue. That's how these best practices are useful for us. Now, another key point we are going to talk about vMotion best practices. We know vMotion is one of the vCenter feature. vMotion is nothing but it's a live migration. And in other words, vMotion, we can also call it as, if you want to migrate a running virtual machine, move the running virtual machine from one ESX to another ESXi host without downtime. That is called virtual machine migration or vMotion. See the VMware vMotion best practices in the right side. This is the diagram. You can migrate the running virtual machine from one ESX to another ESX host using vMotion feature. So, but in this migration, VMware recommend that the best practice is ESXi host hardware. Both ESXi host hardware should be similar hardware, mainly for as possible to avoid failures. If you have a different hardware, definitely there will be some compatibility errors. Some scenarios we can enable a EVC mode, enhanced vMotion compatibility mode. Even if you want to enable enhanced compatibility mode, both ESX host CPU family should be same family. Let's say if you are using a one ESX CPU Gold and even another ESX host is Intel CPU Platinum. If you enable EVC, we can migrate the VM from one host to another host. Suppose if you are using a AMD processor, during that scenario, even EVC also will not support. EVC also will work within CPU family with a different technology, like Intel CPU Platinum, Intel CPU Gold. Both are two different models with same family. During that scenario only, we can enable enhanced vMotion compatibility. Or else VMware recommend to maintain always ESXi host hardware should be same family. And the second point, VMware virtual machine hardware compatible. Even hardware also should maintain a same compatibility version. Avoid failures as newer hardware revisions cannot be run on older ESXi host. Okay, and 10 GB network. Even for best practices, VMware recommend to maintain 10 GB speed in our network will improve vSphere vMotion performance. And fourth point, vSphere vMotion networking should be segregated. Segregated means separated or isolated. Earlier we talked about the vMotion ESXi host management network. So management network also should be in a different VLAN. Same way, vMotion network also should be in a different VLAN. So we can isolate from traffic to prevent the saturation of network leaks. And multiple network cards, same like ESXi host, we already recommend to maintain NIC teaming multiple NICs. Same way for vMotion purpose also, we need to reserve multiple network cards can be configured for vSphere vMotion VM kernel networking to improve performance of migration. Okay, it's also recommended best practice. So now let's talk about a storage vMotion. Even earlier, vMotion means migrating virtual machine from one host to another host. But when it comes to storage vMotion is nothing but a migrating the virtual machine from one data store to another data store without downtime. Here, the only the definition it changes from data store to another data store. Okay. Now let's talk about the storage vMotion best practices. Same like storage vMotion, see one data store to VM migrating to another data store. But the ESXi host is still same ESXi host. It won't migrate from ESXi. Only data store level, it will migrate to another data store. And but in the vSphere storage vMotion, it recommend to maintain a IO load, and also it recommend to maintain a it will support mainly for 4 simultaneous disk copies only, and it's also recommend to maintain a affinity rules in our storage level, all the virtual machine. If you have a anti-affinity rules, it will migrate depends on the rules. Even while doing the concurrent migration, it won't impact your production. And another key point for storage vMotion is vSphere storage vMotion will often have a significantly better performance on vSphere API for array integration. In short form, we call it as VAI. This plugin or these drivers must be installed on our storage array. It will help us to enhance our storage vMotion performance. See here in the diagram also it is showing VAI. Okay, it will significantly enhance better performance. Okay. This is the high level overview of storage vMotion best practices. Now let's talk about another key feature in vCenter is high availability. High availability means continuous availability for our virtual machines. So HA best practices are, as we know, HA means this is also one of the vCenter cluster feature. When you enable HA, if you have a 3 hosts in our cluster, in case of any one ESXi host is failed, using high availability feature, it will migrate virtual machine to another ESXi host wherever the resources are available. So in this diagram, I'm showing you 3 hosts, not only 3. Within our cluster, we can maintain maximum in ESX 7.0, we can maintain 94 ESXi hosts. Even within our 94 ESX in your cluster, randomly any one host is down, no need to worry. Using high availability feature, it will migrate the virtual machine to another ESXi host where the resources are available. So in order to automatically migrate and restart on another ESXi host, HA also require some best practices specifically to networking layer. In networking layer, as similar as ESX host management network, vMotion network, even for HA also we have to reserve one networking port group. When changing the networking configuration, always reconfigure vSphere high availability afterward. It's a recommendation. And specify which networks are used for vSphere HA communication. By default, this is a management network. And network path should be redundant. Redundant means we should maintain a nick teaming policy to avoid isolations of vSphere high availability. And apart from this networking, another point is interoperability. So that means don't mix the version of ESXi in a same cluster. So all versions should be unique versions only. That is recommendation for HA. And vSAN uses its network for vSphere high availability rather than the default. And when enabling vSAN feature, virtual SAN feature, VMware recommend that vSphere high availability should be disabled first and then re-enable. Okay. And admission control, one of the feature in high availability, don't disable admission control or VMs might not be able to failover if an event occurs. So it's always recommend HA admission control feature should be enabled state. These are all the VMware best practices with respect to the high availability feature. Now, let's talk about vSphere fault tolerance best practices. Fault tolerance also one of the vSphere cluster level feature, but we can enable fault tolerance on virtual machine layer. And fault tolerance provides zero downtime and zero data loss protection. When it comes to HEA, there will be a minimal downtime and the availability is 99.99%. But when it comes to vSphere fault tolerance, availability is 100%. That is the main difference between HA and fault tolerance. Let's talk about the fault tolerance best practices. But same like vSphere HA, but in the fault tolerance, when you enable fault tolerance on any virtual machine, it will immediately prepare a secondary copy. In case of ESXi host is down, immediately primary copy will be removed and secondary copy will activate as a primary within fraction of seconds using vlockstep technology or FT agents. So when we are enabling FT agent will take care of preparing another copy immediately, and it will power on the secondary VM within fraction of seconds. That means there will be a no downtime and no reboot. It's a seamless cutover, continuous cutover only. And here are the best practices for FT. Hosts running primary and secondary VMs should run on the approximately the same processor, same like vMotion. We should maintain all hosts in a same processor, and the cluster should be homogeneous clusters. That means same models of cluster. It won't support for a heterogeneous clusters. And all hosts should have a common access to data store. That means shared data store, the same virtual network configuration and same BIOS settings. This is the recommendations. And FT logging network should be configured minimum 10 GB. Same like vMotion, it recommended network speed 10 GB, even for fault tolerance also 10 GB. And the jumbo frames can also help the performance of vSphere fault tolerance. And the network configuration should be distribute each NIC team over two physical switches. So even not only in the virtual network level, even the physical network level, VMware recommend to maintain uh, our NIC teaming NICs both to split to the physically two physical switches. That is also a recommendation. Okay. Now another vSphere feature, DRS, Distributed Resource Scheduler. It is a load balancing mechanism. Let's understand the DRS high level overview. Suppose left side part ESX1, ESX2, ESX3 refers as a one cluster. But if you see in this diagram, ESX1 is running with the 6 VMs, ESX2 running with 1, ESX3 with 2 VMs. Suppose in this 3 ESXi host cluster, when we enable a DRS feature, this DRS will help us to balance the load among the ESXi host. Suppose when we enable the DRS, see it's changed like this. That means 3 VMs are moved, 2 VMs move to the ESX2 and 1 VM move to ESX3. The load equally distributed for 3 ESXi hosts. That is the main benefit of DRS, Distributed Resource Scheduler. And it is also required some best practices, same like HE and fault tolerance. It requires to maintain a homogeneous hardware replacement, and vSphere vMotion should be compatible with all the hosts or DRS will not function. And the more hosts available, the better DRS functions because there are more functions or available placements of VMs. And DRS automatic mode should be used to take full benefit of DRS. This is the recommendation. And ideal VMs can affect the DRS placement decisions, and the DRS affinity should be used to keep VMs apart, and such as in the case of load balance configuration providing high availability. That means normally the virtual machines, if you are maintaining a active directory, primary IAD and secondary IAD, it's recommended to configure a AD anti-affinity rules. Suppose when the application perspective, if your application should run on a same ESXi host, it recommend to configure as a DRS affinity. That means together application VMs run on one ESXi host. That's how depends on the customer requirement. We can configure DRS rules. Some VMs may recommend to configure DRS affinity, and some VMs it may require to configure DRS anti-affinity rules. Okay. Now let's talk about the another key concept, vSphere storage best practices. So even in the within a vSphere storage also we have a multiple storage options, but in the real world scenario it's a subjected to be customer's choice. Some customers may go with VMFS configuration. Even within VMFS they may go with FCSAN or iSCSI. But some customers, if they don't have a much budget, they may go for a NFS storage, and some customers they may go for a vSAN. If they want to looking for a automation as well, for automation also if you want to configure, it recommend to configure as a software defined storage, which is virtual SAN. And some customers may use virtual volumes as well. But in the high level, within our storage level, we have a four types of file systems in VMware. supported file systems: VMFS, NFS network file system, vSAN, and vSphere virtual volumes. You can store your virtual machines. We can store on any of the data store type. And in order to access the VMFS, NFS, and all, it requires some transport protocols. Those are like for a normal disk, it's like a direct attached storage. And for FCSAN to access the LAN, we require a fiber channel protocol. And we can also use another protocol, FC, fiber channel over Ethernet protocol, and iSCSI SAN. But interviewer may ask, what is the VMFS supported protocol? You can explain this. What is NFS protocol? It's a NFS protocol only. It will access through Ethernet. And vSAN means it's a direct attached only. The disks are running on a ESX directly. Okay, and vSphere volumes, it will support for both VMFS volumes and also Ethernet volumes. And the disk backing, we can store normal direct attached storage, we can store on a disk. And for FCO, and iSCSI, we can store on LUN, logical unit number. And for NFS, we can store it on a NFS file system, normal shared folders only. And vSAN, we can configure vSAN cluster. It is one of the vCenter cluster feature. Within our vCenter cluster, we can enable a virtual SAN. And virtual volumes, we can configure in any of the JBOD using the storage array, just a bunch of disk. That is also called it as storage container. From the storage container, you can create a multiple vSphere virtual volumes. And ESXi host should be configured with shared access to data store. But which data store we can choose, that is a subject to be customer's choice. But in general, for testing and development, they may use NFS data store, and for production environment, they may go for a VMFS, either FC SAN or iSCSI SAN. And if your customer is looking for a automation options, they may choose for a virtual SAN or virtual volumes. Most of the time, they may go for vSAN, and some other data they can store on a vSphere virtual volumes. And in detail concepts, you can go through our Gnan Cloud Garage playlist for in detail VMFS, how to configure NFS, vSAN, and virtual volumes. Okay, and here I'm giving a high level overview and also showing you the best practices. So same like vMotion and vCenter features, even for fiber channel, we require VMFS storage and also path selection policy. It's recommended based on the storage vendor. We can choose the path selection policy like fixed MRU round robin. So whatever recommendation given by principal vendor, accordingly you can choose the storage path selection policy. And also we can maintain a document for all your storage information, zoning, LUN masking, firmware versions, and all. It's really useful when you are performing a troubleshooting. Okay, and the plan for failover, same like network teaming, how we did it. Even storage level also, we should configure a multi-path connection policy. Okay, multi-pathing is recommended best practice. And ensure that even HBA cards also we can install accurately. And also we should maintain some performance statistics. And also we should be, if you plan to change any of your storage LUN IDs, VMware recommend that it's not recommend to change, even it may causes some of the virtual machine may fail. Always contact our principal vendor when you are performing any high level changes on your existing LUN IDs. Okay, and similar to iSCSI, almost same like a FC-SAN, only the concept is protocol is different, but the configuration part is same like FC-SAN. And when comes to the NFS, here also protocol only different. And here make sure NFS servers you listed in our VMware hardware compatibility list. When you plan to use NFS, we need to validate whether this NFS is compatible with our ESXi 7.0 and vCenter 7.0. Okay, and when configuring NFS storage, follow the recommendations from our storage vendor. Like we have a Nutanix storage vendor for providing NFS storage. We have HPE storage NFS and store ones, and we also have some other vendors like NetApp, EMC, any vendor, whatever customer we choose, that customers we need to validate when configuring the NFS storage, and verify that NFS volume is exported using NFS over TCP, and verify that NFS server export the particular shares either any of the protocol version, NFS 3 or NFS 4.1, whatever version they are choosing, we can choose the relevant versions, but doesn't provide both protocol versions for the same share. We can choose only one version at a time. And this policy needs to be enforced by server because ESXi doesn't prevent mounting the same share through different NFS version. We always use the same version. Suppose our source is showing NFS 3, even our destination ESXi host data store also, we should choose the same version. If you choose the latest version, it may have a compatibility issues. Okay. Now, let's talk about another key concept in vSphere networking best practices. And before going to the best practices, we should understand that what is a difference between standard vSwitch and distributed vSwitch. As we know, standard virtual switch, we have standard virtual switch you should create only on a within ESXi host level. We cannot create a one v standard vSwitch. Each ESX we cannot join that vSwitch to another ESX. That is a drawback in standard vSwitch. But when comes to the distributed switch, if you see in this diagram, we have one distributed switch. It associated to two ESXi hosts. Not only two, we can assign for a multiple ESXi host. That is the benefit of the name itself says distributed virtual switch. But standard switch, it's dedicated only for one ESXi host, and distributed switch feature is available in only in the vCenter level. It's not available in a standard switch level. And port groups, we can configure mainly multiple port groups, one port group dedicatedly for management traffic, one for vMotion traffic, and other port group for a virtual machine traffic. Same port group, instead of creating multiple times on standard switch layer, when we are using a distributed switch, one time you can configure the port group. That production port group you can assign to production VMs, and VM kernel port group you can distribute it to the management traffic as well as vMotion, and also you can assign it to the storage traffic as well. That is a high level overview between standard switch and distributed switch. And even when you are using a distributed switch, all our manual network configuration steps are reduced. If you are using a standard switch, we have to configure multiple times. Let's say I have 100 ESXi host. If I want to configure networking 100 times, we need to log into individual host. We need to create a port groups. But when it comes to distributed switch, you just create one distributed switch and configure VM kernel port group, production VM network port group and all. So within short time, we can set up the network configurations. So most of the real-time scenarios, VMware recommend to go with the distributed switch. But suppose if your organization not enough to procure the distributed switch licenses, then only we can go with the standard vSwitch, or else always recommendation is preferred to choose latest versions, which is distributed virtual switch. And coming to the networking best practices. So networking best practices, we should maintain a CPU plays a large role in the performance of virtual networking. More vCPU. Suppose sometime customer may complain they have some network performance issue. That time we need to validate that whether that virtual machine have a more vCPUs or not. And sharing physical NICs. Even sharing physical NICs, same like our multipathing in storage, NIC teaming in the ESXi level, even for the networking concepts also, best practice, we should validate all the physical NICs are sharing among the devices or not. And traffic between the virtual machine, we can configure some QoS policies, quality of service, and the distributors should be used wherever possible because they offer the greater granularity on traffic flow than standard switches, as I mentioned. Okay, and vSphere network and storage IO control can dramatically help with contention on system. This should be used whenever possible. Okay, this is also always recommend to enable storage IO control and network IO control options. It will help us to narrow down our troubleshooting issues. And another key point is VMware tools must be installed on all our production virtual machine, and subsequently VMX Net 3. This is one of the latest network driver, VMX Net 3. This driver should be updated on all our virtual machine, and all virtual machine network card type should be VMX Net 3. When you map the network type to VMX Net 3, all the VMX Net 3 drivers will install automatically through VMware tools and should be used in all virtual machine to allow for enhanced network capabilities. If you need enhanced network capabilities, make sure that our virtual machine running with the latest VMware tools and mapped with VMX Net 3 adapter. All our production virtual machines as well as test and development virtual machines. Okay, these are the networking best practices. So hope you understand all the best practices concept, and in next class I will start focusing on the troubleshooting concept. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. And please do view, like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Grand Cloud Garage. That's it for today. Bye for now.